Shalom, Bruchim Habayim. We're here at the Kol Ahavat Yisrael, Kol of San Diego. We're continuing in Hilchot Kashrut. We're in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, Siman Mem Vav. That's Hilchot Machalot Asirut, the laws of forbidden foods, meaning Kashrut. And we're continuing in Sif Yud Beit. By the way, we're here every day from 10 to 4. The Kollel is open, and on Fridays 10 to 1. And you're all welcome to come and invited to come and join us in the learning. And Kol HaKavod, watching online is fantastic as well. So starts the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Mi she'achal gvina v'rotza le'echol basar. So this is a continuation of the last shiur where we're talking about having meat after dairy. We gave a list of conditions that you have to check your hands and you have to wash out your mouth in two ways. Kiduach v'adach, you have to eat something and drink something or wash out your mouth. And then you can have meat immediately after milk. So you can have a meat dish right after dairy. But those were the conditions. So it continues here and it gives some more conditions. So now you're at the next meal. You're at your meat meal after your dairy meal. So it says it's kitzur tzarich levad. In the last shiur that bread is not allowed to be eaten. You're not allowed to eat that bread with the other type of food. If you ate bread at a meat meal, you can't have the same bread at a dairy, and vice versa. So you have to get rid of tzarich leva'er. You have to get rid of all of all the pieces of bread. You have to clear them away off the table before you want to have your meat meal after the dairy meal. Also, like to remind us, it's talking about, like we said, it's at a different meal, so it's not the same meal. So either you broke the meal Birkat Hamazon, or you said you're after bracha, whatever it was. It's a different meal. It could be immediately after, but it has to be also a different meal. Vasur lechol gvina al mapa she'achlo basar v'chen lehipuch. And also, what's with the tablecloth? So the tablecloth, and this is halach of the tablecloths that we see that we have separate tablecloths for bisari and separate tablecloth for chalavi. So that's what he's saying. Asur lechol gvina mapa she'achlo basar. You're not allowed to eat cheese on a tablecloth that you had meat. V'chein lehipuch, and also vice versa. Gam asur lachtok b'sakin shel basar pat lachlo im gvina. V'chein lehipuch. So here, what about cutting the bread? You have the meat. You have your meat knife. And so you have a clean meat, your clean meat knife. You take it from the drawer, or so either way, your dairy knife or your meat knife, and now you want to use it for the other type of meal. So you're not allowed to cut bread, pat bread, lachlo im gvina. So you can't cut with that fleshik knife, you can't cut bread and then have that bread with dairy. Like we said, even if it's clean, even if the knife is clean. So what if you're out traveling or something, you only have one knife, and it's a fleshik knife, and it's completely clean. So he says here, so we have the halacha, the right proper way that you should do something. And then you have shatat chak. Shatat chak means that you're on a situation, you're in a specific situation, and you're limited. So you need to know that sometimes the halacha could be different when you're in a limited situation like that. So he says here, b'shatat chak, kigon shu b'derech, like you're on the way, you're camping or wherever it is. Mutar lo lachtoch b'sakin shel basar shel basar. So then you would be able to cut the bread with the fleshik knife and eat that bread with the dairy. But here's the condition: Kshu naki umikunach heitev heitev. So he doubles the word heitev. That means it has to be clean and washed in however you can clean it and wash it. Heitev heitev, the best way that you could possibly wash it. Make sure that the knife is clean as it can possibly be, and then you would be able to cut bread, lecholi magvina vechin hipuch. You would be able to cut bread with that knife. But we have to note here that we're talking about cutting the bread, not cheese or dairy. You wouldn't be able to use that knife to cut cheese. It's a fleshik knife. We're only talking about cutting the bread, which is it's dry and it's parv. So how do you clean the knife? So there's many ways you can clean the knife however you possibly can. Sometimes in the halacha it speaks about a knife or something, a knife that became not kosher and it's cold or something. So some places it's brought down. You can stick it into the ground, stab it into the dirt a few times, and that's one way that the halacha sometimes speaks about cleaning off the knife. Okay, we're continuing. Sif Yud Gimel. This Sif is talking about sharpness, sharp foods, sharp knife, sharp foods. These affect the halacha. The sharpness is considered like heat or like cooking in a certain way, and so when something sharp like a knife comes together with something sharp like an onion, or we'll give a list of examples of sharp foods, so that could cause a problem of basar v'chalav. So some examples of sharp foods, it could be garlic, radishes, olives, lemons, horseradish, peppers, hot peppers, things, all kinds of charif, of sharp foods. So let's see the halacha. Im chatach besakin shel basar bitzalim. So you had a fleshik knife, a bisari knife that you used to cut meat. Oshar. So you cut into an onion. Bitzalim, oshar devar charif, or any other food that's sharp. Unetanam lema'achal chalav. So you took these onions that you cut with the fleshik knife, and now you put it into your dairy dish. So that is obahipuch, or you did this with the dairy knife, and you put it into the meat dish. The davar charif, you put the peppers or the olives or the horseradish, whatever it was, in this sharp food, and you put it into the other type of food. Then you have a sheila, a big sheila, sheilat chacham. You have to call your local Orthodox rabbi, call your posek, and you have to ask what to do with that food that contains that onion. So what's the sheilat chacham? What is the rabbi? Many of the factors that can affect the halacha that the rabbi has to consider when you ask him. So some of the questions he might ask you will be like how sharp the food was. Was it real charif? Was it hot peppers, or was it a bell pepper or a regular pepper or who knows what? Then the other question would be when was the knife last used? So it's a meat knife. We said that you cut into the pepper. So how long has the knife been sitting in the drawer without being used for meat? That's going to be another question. And then also obviously whether the knife was clean when it cut into the onion. If it had any residue of meat or something, that would make it much worse. But if it's clean, so then that would make it better, and you would possibly be able to eat the dairy dish or the meat dish that contains the davar charif of the other type. So due to the details that are involved in this kind of question, you would always have to ask your rabbi or posek. Yud Daled. So Seif Yud Daled is halacha of Marit Ayin. This is actually the same halacha we started when we started the first shiur, when we did the first few seifim or simanim in the actual Shulchan Aruch. We started with Hilchot Basar B'Chalav, and we went into this halacha in detail. So if you've heard it already, we'll add a few details, and for those who haven't heard it, great. Haoseh tavshil mi basar b'chalev shkedim. So you made a dish, a meat dish, and you cook this meat dish in almond milk. So this is going to be the halacha of a marit ayin, of doing something that looks like you're doing something wrong. So if you cooked up this mixture of meat and almond milk, And by the way, it would be the same halakha would apply for any type of milk, any type of non-dairy milk. So it could be soy milk, or plant milk, or any other milk. So, but tzarich la'aniach bo b'tocho shkedim. So you'd have to, when you're cooking it, or when you're serving it, whether you're cooking it together, or it was cooked separately, just serving it together, the meat with this non-dairy milk. So you have to put into it a little bit of almonds. Why do you put a little almonds? So they can see that it's almond milk and they know that it's not regular milk. Mipnei marita ayin. This is the halacha marit ayin. We said many halachot have this halacha marit ayin of something that looks suspicious. That's the word I was looking for. It looks suspicious, so those things are not allowed. So even something that's completely allowed, like we had the example the other day of dam dagim. We had the fish blood that you're not allowed to put it in a bowl, also and eat it or drink it because it looks like it is blood. It's blood just of a fish, and people won't be able to tell that it's fish blood. And so many halachot of marit ayin, and that's what this halacha is talking about with the chalav shkedim, or the non-dairy milk. We also said in these halachot of marit ayin, so this kind of thing where you're doing something that looks suspicious, it doesn't matter if there are people around or not. We said even in private, it's called lo plug, that the chachamim, when they made halacha, it applies across the board, and here they didn't make any difference whether you're alone or whether you're with people. Something that's asur because of marit ayin will be asur whether you're in private or not. So how do we get around marit ayin? We said this shkedim. That's what you do. That's the way to get around it. With this marit ayin, maybe there's many times there's ways to make it okay, make it all right. If you're at a wedding and you're serving meat and there's the non-dairy milk, so they put a little sign that it's this power of milk or something. A sign would be okay. Here the sign is the almonds. But making a sign so that it's well known, whatever it is, in the dam shel dagim, we said if there was kaskasim, if there was some scales in the fish blood, in that case, that also would have been okay, as long as there's something clearly that you can tell that it's kosher. Continuing. Okay, Tetvav, Seif Tetvav. So this halacha is going to talk about switching over kelim. You have your fleshik pots and your milk pots. So you decide, you know what, this pot would really, it's a meat pot, but it would really do very good, as it would match very well with our set of dairy pots. So let me just make it kosher. I'll kasher the pot, and then it's a completely parv pot, and then I'll use it for milk. So he says, "Noagin shelo lagiil klei chalav lishtamesh bo bebasar o ipcha." That the custom is not to do that. No, that we don't switch around the designation if something is fleshik, something is dairy, or it's meat dishes or pots and pans. We keep them that way. We don't switch them around. But we'll see that there is an exception. So again, it's okay. It really is kosher. It's just that the custom is not to switch them around. So the Mishnah Berurah brings in the Sefer Mishnah Berurah, brings a Chatam Sofer that he says when you do it for Pesach. So you go that's the exception is Pesach. Pesach, you take your kelim, you take your pots and pans, and you go and you have them boiled inside bigger pans, and that's called Haga'il. That's how we started. No Shalol Haga'il, to kasher a pot. You do Hagala. You dunk it in another pot that has boiling water, and you dunk the pot that you want to kasher into the other pot. So that's the same thing. It's the same thing we do on Pesach to get rid of the chametz. When we have on Pesach you have to get rid of all the leavened bread from your house and from the kelim. So it means anywhere in the kelim it's not enough on Pesach just to take the bread out of the house. You can't use the kelim, the pots and pans, even if they haven't been used for months, even if whatever it is, they could be deep in the walls. Could be in the walls. We know that the walls absorb the taste of the food and it can stay there for a long time. So when Pesach comes, we take all of our pots and pans and we kasher them. Or you have separate brand new separate set for Pesach. So ashrecha is even better. But otherwise, if you want to keep using the kelim that you use the whole year, so when it comes Pesach time, you'd have to kasher them. So he says over here at that point, when you kasher them for Pesach, then you can switch. So once a year, you can switch over your pots and pans from dairy to meat, or from meat to dairy when you kasher them for Pesach. Sif Tet Zayin. So now the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is going to talk about how careful we have to be when sending food. So you're sending food, it's going in a truck, it's going with other people. So who knows what's going to happen between the time that you give the person the food to take to let's say to deliver it to someone, to a store, to give it to somebody else. And you're delivering it with a non-Jew. He goes to the Kitzur, the Shulchan Aruch calls it Akum. Akum is literally an idol worshiper, idolater. So the Sfarim can talk about Akum, talk about a non-Jew as an idolater, is the same thing, and so there are trust issues going on when you're sending between Jews and non-Jews. There are trust issues, and we don't know what happened to the food until it got to its destination, and whether it was tampered with. So we need to be sure 100% that food was not tampered with when it's taken from one place to another by either Biyad Akum, a non-Jew, an idolater, a non-Jew, Mikol Shekain Biyad Yisrael Chashut, and even more so, if you have somebody, even a Jew, but he's chashud. I mean, he doesn't a Jew, but he doesn't behave properly. He does things that are against the Torah, and actually the Shulchan Aruch talks about there's a Ramah in Shulchan Aruch that explains what is considered chashud, what's considered that you have to worry that he might not behave properly. So we said this is something she'ein bo siman. Again, let's start from the beginning. Yain basar v'chatichat dag, wine, or meat, or a piece of fish. She'ein bo siman. That means you can't tell inherently, that you can't tell this piece of meat from a different piece of meat, or this piece of fish, or this wine. It could be mixed up, and you won't be able to tell that it's the actual wine that you sent or the meat that you sent. So, what is the answer? How do we do it? We want to send off our food or our wine with this delivery person, whoever it is. Tzarich shnei chotamot. So, the answer is that you need 2 seals. It has to be sealed with 2 separate seals. So it seems that what are we afraid of over here? We're afraid either the shaliach, the messenger, they could get hungry, and they could eat the food. So they ate the food, then they're going to get fired. They ate their food, so they'll replace it. They'll buy a donuts for something else, or whatever it is that you're sending. The fish or the meat or the wine, they'll buy a different one that's not kosher, and they'll just replace it in order not to lose their job. But in the meantime, they were able to satiate themselves. So, in the case of wine, so what do we do with the wine? The wine could have been used possibly on the way. He's going to take some of the wine, and wine is one of the things they used as a libation offering. They used like an offering to the avodah zarah, to the idol worship. The wine was one of the things that was used. So maybe they used your wine for idolatry, and that would also make the wine to be not, that would ruin the wine for kosher, or would be not kosher. So continues the kitzur. Aval yain mevushal. But what about cooked wine? So we know cooked wine is different halakha. It doesn't become yain nesach. That's what we're afraid of. The yain nesach. That's what we said, that he used the wine for his idol worship. That's yain nesach. Aval yain mevushal. But if it's cooked wine, b'kein hachometz shel yain, or vinegar wine, b'chalav, upat, ugvina, or milk products, or bread, or cheese, sagi b'chotam echad, those things are okay with 1 seal. So we said wine or meat or a piece of fish, that would need 2 seals when you're sending it. And these other things, bread, milk, cheese, and chometz yain, those you need only 1 seal. So why these 1 seal and the other things 2 seals? So it's I saw in some of the Farshim that they seem to say that the first part of the list, where you need 2 seals, those are the dioraita. Those are asur mi'at Torah. Asur mi'at Torah, so you need 2 seals. It's much more strict. But the yain mevushal, the chometz yain, chalav, patuk, vina, sag, those things. It seems that they're more the main concerns in those types of foods are rabbinic concerns, and so it's enough in 1 seal. So the next seif, Yud Zayin. So what about sending in a bag? So you're sending. It's the same halacha as above, but you're not just sending the food. It's specific to a bag. This halacha is specific to a sack, called a sack. Im sholeach mafkid eze davar besak. Sack, the same word as sack in English. So sarich shiyu hatfirot mibifnim ulekashro ulekhatmo. So for a bag, the seal, if it would be a seal, you'd put a seal on top. So the seal on top doesn't really help. Let's see. If the seal is at the opening of the bag, of the sack, so all they have to do to tamper with the sack, if someone wants to tamper with such a sack, you open up the stitches at the bottom of the bag, and then they can re-stitch it. So if you put the stitches on the inside, that you make the stitches that they're folded and they're on the inside, so that is a bag that can't be re-sewn, and you would know if it was re-sewn because the stitches would be on the outside and not on the inside. Also, the seal that we put, if the seal that is on top is the threads is a requirement for a bag. It's not considered a seal. So if the seal is on top and you have the threads on the bottom from the inside, just like you said here, still all you have is 1 seal. So we said that on the halacha just above that there's some foods that need 2 seals and some that need 1 seal. So if you would have to have what if it was yain or basar, chatichat dag, the things that require 2 seals, and you put them into the bag. So in that case, they say that you would have to the food itself. You would put the food you would seal the food and put a seal around the food, and then put that food with the seal into the bag, and the bag has the seal, and then you have your 2 seals for those types of foods that require the 2 seals. So if Yudchet, so what happens if you sent it? So we said the many halachot. There's the proper way to do it. There's shatat chak if you're in a specific situation, and then the third thing that you need to know with halacha is what if it was done already? Like we had many cases. We said if it was done, sometimes you need to ask a rabbi. Sometimes it's okay if it was done, and that's called bidi avad. It was already done. It's not that means I shouldn't have done it in the first place, but I did it bidi avad. So what's the halacha bidi avad if after I did it? So he says here, im eira sheshalach al yidei akum. So what happens if you send with a non-Jew, a delivery person, let's say, a behema, an animal, or oaf, or chicken, shchutim, shechted chickens that are shechted, they're ready to go to the store to be sold. Ushar davar below chotam, or anything else, and you didn't use the seal, you didn't have the proper seal. So he says Yaseh Shelat Chacham. So when the Kitzur here says Yaseh Shelat Chacham, you have to ask your rabbi. You have to ask a sheila. You have to call your rabbi and ask him, or posek, and ask the question. It means because there are many details that could go into this question, and it's not clear. You can't say whether it would be okay or not. So again, let's go into some of the details that might be asked. So you sent it already without, it didn't have the proper seal, like we learned above, it has to have the proper seal. And here you sent it below chotam, it does not have a seal, and you sent it without the seal. So what is the halacha? You have to throw it out, you can, what is it? So we said you have to ask, and these are going to be some of the details that are going to go into this question. So the first question is where the idolater, where the non-Jew carried the food, where was it, where did he carry it to? What place? Whether the food is recognized somehow to be the same food, that means can you somehow tell at least that the food that you sent, that at least it's the same food? Some kind of siman, some kind of sign on it, something that you can tell. And many other factors that cause that you have to make a sheila. And it could be that the rabbi would tell you the b'diavad it's okay, that you can still eat it. He'll see, depending on many different factors. See if Yud Tet. So we were talking about tampering in the previous Siyafim, that when you deliver something, that the delivery person could, or whoever you leave it with, even you just leave your things with somebody, they could tamper with it. So what about tampering with the hashgachos itself, with the seal, with the kosher, putting a seal on a food and saying kosher? That's it. They put kosher on the food. They put some kind of hechsher that it could be something that you recognize. What's with those tampering with hechshers, with hashgachos of that go on food, like the OU or the chavkei, any hechsher that goes on a food. So we have a klal that is very important in kashrut that people know. I see people making mistakes in this a lot of times. That the klal is that any food is assumed to be not kosher until you know that it's kosher. So if it's a fruit, an apple, a peach, maybe those are easy. You know it's kosher because it's an apple. But what if it's so you have people. I've seen many people make the mistake. They think that if they go to let's say a vegan restaurant or something, so it's vegan. It's what could be not kosher over there already. The truth is, any Rav Mashgiach could give you a full list of things of problems that are non-kosher foods that you would be eating by going into such a restaurant or eating such food. People say pizza. If it's just pizza, it's just cheese. It's bread and with the cheese pizza. So people think so. That's not called a non-kosher food. Very, very mistaken. There's a long list of isurim. You could have many chataim and averot by making such mistakes and such assumptions. So the assumption, like we're saying, assumption is always that it's not kosher until you know for sure 100% that it is kosher. We don't assume that because it seems to have these kind of ingredients or other kind of ingredients that we can say that it's kosher. It has to have a good kosher hashgacha and seal on it, or you know 100% that you know that it's kosher. So that's one of the things this is talking about. So, says the Kitzur, Gvinot ushar dvarim shehem bidei akum. You have cheeses or other things, other types of food that they're in the hands of non-Jews. Afa pihe shehem b'chotam, even though it has on it a hechsher, it has a seal, it says kosher, kosher. O bitfus shehem ksherim. Until you find out who's behind that hechsher, you know who gave the authority to give that hechsher to say it's kosher. We know if something has a K on it. So what is it? We don't know, and nobody knows. But sometimes you can go and find out. You want to go and find out. Go and find out. But until you find out what exactly this hechsher is, it could be in Hebrew. It could be whatever it is. We don't know until you know. You don't know. So how does this work nowadays with the hechsher? Why can't somebody? So today's to the protection of the hechsherim today that we have, the OU and all and so on and so forth, the Chav K, Circle K, Star K. So you can't just take a Star K. If someone takes a Star K and puts it on their food and sells it, so they're in big trouble. So that's copyright infringement, and there's fraud protection. That the fraud is punishable by the government. the government protects for copyright and fraud, so people would be afraid to forge a symbol that is copyrighted, and therefore we can rely on something that has those symbols on it. It has a kosher symbol that we recognize, so we're allowed to eat it in those cases because of today's protection of the copyright infringement. I think that's good. We'll stop here for today's shiur. Tomorrow we're starting with Seif, or tomorrow the next, whatever the next shiur is. I believe Friday. Otherwise, we're learning here every day from 3 to 4. But the next live shiur, I believe, will be Friday. We'll be talking about cooking with 2 pots in the same oven with kosher food and not kosher food, and these two having 2 pots that are being cooked in the same oven and similar halachot to those. And we hope to see you all continuing and learn, and please come, like we said, in person, and Ashreichem Kol HaKavod.